Hello, I'm Sister Carino.
I'm Sister Lucy.
We are Dominican Sisters of St. Joseph.
And today we are answering the internet's questions about nuns.
Okay, why are nuns called sisters? So nuns are called sisters as a reminder that within the church we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. And the thing with being a nun or a religious sister is that you're living out what it means to be a Christian in a really, really visual, obvious way for other people to see and hopefully to be inspired by. And so we remind ourselves and the world that we're all brothers and sisters in Christ by referring to ourselves and asking others also to call us sister. So I'm Sister Carino, Sister Lucy. And yeah, it's a reminder that we are all brothers and sisters in Christ, and also we're called to live that very close unity in our particular community of sisters as well.
And I think it's a reminder as well, when we call each other sister, and when we introduce ourselves as sister to people outside of our community as well, we're letting them know that we're available to them. Like, we want them to see us as people who are there for them, people who can pray for them, people who care about them, who care about the salvation of their souls, but just care about them as human beings as well. And I think also referring to each other as sisters, one of the things I was reflecting on is it's a sign of equality as well. Like, if you're sisters, I mean, you know, those who are members of families may disagree, but in theory, all siblings are equal in the eyes of their parents. Like, there's no sense of hierarchy there. We meet as equals. We're children in the sight of God.
And if you forget our names, you can just call us sister. So that's great.
Also true. Everyone else is at an advantage.
Exactly.
We forget people's names and it's awkward, but if people forget our names, it's not so awkward.
No problem. Sister Lucy, question 2. What is the point of being a nun?
Again, I think there's many ways you can answer that. I would say that the point of being a nun is to dedicate your life as wholly as you can to the service of Jesus Christ, if that is the way that you have been called to do so. To be a nun is to have received a particular calling, to receive the love of God in a particular way, and then to return that with your whole life, and to then be a sign of that love to the rest of the church, and to give that love to others as best as you can, according to the charism of your particular order.
It's easier to understand what the point of being a nun is when we've got a good sense of what the point of being a human being is. So as human beings, we're all called to communion with God and communion with other people. We're called to love God and to love others. And once we're kind of confident in that kind of vision of the human person, then it becomes clear, oh, for some people, they receive a calling from God to live out that call to communion with him and with others in what we call the consecrated religious life. So the life of being a nun, a monk, a sister, a brother.
Why do nuns wear habits?
Why do nuns wear habits? Am I going first?
I think you're starting.
Okie dokie. So nuns wear habits for 2 reasons. To remind us all sisters of something, and also to remind the people in the wider church, in the wider world, of something. Because the religious life, the life that we lead, is meant to be a sign. It's a sign of what we're called to. It's a sign that there's more to this life than just this life, that actually we're called to live with God in perfect happiness in heaven. That's what our life is a sign of. And the thing with signs is they've got to be easy to see. They've got to be obvious. And so that's why we wear distinctive clothing, to show that we're living a life where we've been set apart to witness to the fact that the human person is made for God. And we make that really obvious for people. So it means that, you know, if I'm on a bus or a train or just sort of out and about, people can see me and think, right, there's a religious sister. I can ask her for prayers. I can talk to her about what's worrying me. Or people often just feel, I'm told, people say that it's just really encouraging and kind of fills them with hope to see that there are people who dedicate their whole lives to God and to prayer. But it's also a good reminder for us as well. You know, when you put this on every single morning, you're reminded of what God is calling me to be, what he's asking me to do. And when I see, you know, Sister Lucy or the other sisters in that habit, I'm reminded that actually we're living this community life. We're part of all this unity of our religious community.
Yes, I think that's really put really beautifully. And I suppose I would just say on a very practical level as well, like different orders, different religious orders wear different kinds of habits as well. So Sister Carino and I are wearing habits, so you know that we're religious sisters or nuns, but because we're wearing a white habit with a black veil, those of you who know anything about habits or religious orders will be able to identify from that we are Dominican sisters. Just as if you saw a nun wearing black, you might think, oh, maybe she's a Benedictine. If they're wearing brown or grey, maybe Franciscan. It's also a way of being able to identify which order we're a part of.
Yeah. Sister Lucy, do nuns marry Jesus?
This is a great question. So I would say the short answer is yes, in a manner of speaking. The longer answer is that it's the best imagery that we've got to explain the relationship that a nun has with Christ. And in fact, when a religious sister makes her final profession, so her final vows where she dedicates herself to yes, I'm going to live as a religious sister for the rest of my life, part of the liturgy is that she is given a ring. You can see we've got ours. As the ring is placed on her finger, the celebrant of that religious profession will say, I espouse you to Jesus Christ. So just as in a marriage, it's a mutual self-giving, like the bride gives herself to the husband and the husband to the bride. That, in a very deep way, is what is happening when a nun makes vows as a nun. She's giving herself to Jesus, who has given himself totally to her. But it should also be understood that it is a metaphor. It's not the same as an earthly marriage to another human being in that sense. But the imagery of marriage to explain this kind of relationship with God is very, very ancient, and it goes back to the Bible, the Song of Songs especially.
When people hear the word marriage, they think of human marriage, whereas actually both human marriage and the espousal to Jesus that religious sisters experience, both of these make sense in the light of the fact that we talk about Jesus' relationship with the church as being like a spousal relationship. You know, Christ is our loving divine bridegroom, and the church, which he gave his life for, is his bride. And so because we're signs of what it means to be the church, we can be called brides of Christ or married to Jesus. Because we've all got some experience of human spousal love, you know, that total self-giving, all-consuming love between a man and a woman in marriage, that helps us to make sense of the total commitment to God that a religious sister makes.
And I think that understanding is really important, because it stops people from thinking of, because sometimes people can fall into thinking of a religious life as a job, it's like being employed, it's like having a career that you're really passionate about. And it's well, no, even if you do work as a religious sister, the heart of your life is relationship. It is that relationship with Christ. So the imagery of marriage gets a lot closer to it than the image of a job, even a really fulfilling one.
Yeah, it's that relational imagery, that relational language that helps make sense of religious life. And that, I think, actually leads nicely into the next question that the internet has about nuns, which is, why are nuns celibate? It'd be really easy to fall into that trap of saying, oh, it's to give them more time for ministry, or it's because, marriage is a bad thing, sex is icky, all of these kind of ideas. But actually, all of these are false ideas, and it's that you can only make sense of being celibate if we understand first that our relationship to God as religious sisters is a spousal relationship. It's an all-consuming, fulfilling relationship. And for most people, we discover the depths of our relationality, of our call to be committed and fulfilled by God, actually through our relationships with others. So through the relationship of marriage, married people discover that calling to be united with God actually through the love of their spouse. But that love of the spouse is actually like a stepping stone up to the fulfillment of our human relationality, which is in heaven with God. And what we do as sisters is we kind of skip the stepping stone and go straight for the all-encompassing, all-fulfilling union with God, as a reminder to people that that's what our human relationships are pointing to. So we don't give up marriage because it's bad, actually quite the opposite. We give it up to remind people that it's pointing to something even greater, which is a spousal union with God.
We've talked a bit already about the idea of nuns being signs for the world and for the church. And again, celibacy is very much a part of that, because as Sister Carino said, the reason that nuns are celibate is to live more to go straight to that all-consuming love of God in a way that's a particular gift given. Celibacy, the ability to live celibately in that way is a particular grace which those called to the religious life are given and enabled to live, and it's something that points towards heaven, because Jesus tells us very clearly in the Gospels there won't be marriage in heaven in the sense that there is here on earth. People aren't going to be
going to
weddings in heaven, but rather there will be the marriage of the Lamb, where all of us who are in heaven will be perfectly united to God. So we've started living in some sort of mysterious, foreshadowy way the kind of life that we're going to be living in heaven, and we are here to remind everyone that that is what they are called towards as well.
What are some misconceptions that people have about nuns?
Oh, there are so many.
Somebody once thought that my veil was sewn to my head.
That is a true fact. I was there for that.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And I kind of went, no. So that's one misconception people have. It's not sewn to my head.
Another one is that if you're in a pilgrimage, if you're in a place of pilgrimage as a pilgrim, you're visiting a basilica or, a shrine, everyone there will assume that you know everything about that shrine and what time mass is, and they will ask you. And then if you tell them, oh, I don't know, I'm only visiting, they will look at you like you are an imposter.
Yeah, and like their world has fallen apart because you're impersonating a nun. It's rough. I think people think that you become a nun because you're already very holy. And this is like the rubber stamp on it. Like, you're doing great. And here is just confirmation, like here are some weird clothes to prove it. Whereas actually the reason people enter convent life is because we're aware that we need help on the journey to holiness.
A lot of help.
And
so much help.
Yeah, and so, in a convent you can experience things like, distractions in prayer, not getting enough sleep so you feel a bit grumpy in the morning, having to work out, conflicts and disagreements. And actually you're not just kind of living on like a sparkly cloud full of rainbows and unicorns all the time. So I think that's a bit of a shock to some people, but also it's part of being a sign. Part of being that sign is that in religious life, you need to forgive others and yourself. You need to sometimes, just recommit yourself in God's grace, with God's help, to the life you've chosen. All of these normal human experiences of frailty or fragility, of letting God or others down, you still experience them in religious life. But this is the context where you've got all the help that you need from God to work through them in His grace and to receive the love and the help and the forgiveness that all of us need from other people, but in like a really kind of obvious way.
Yeah. I think another misconception that people have is that people assume that if you're called to the religious life, this happens in some kind of instantaneous way, or they think that if you decide, right, I'm called to be a nun, you can just enter a convent immediately, and that's that.
Like the door slams shut behind you, and like
there's no going back.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, actually, the process of discerning one's vocation takes time, and it's also it should be a process of mutual dialogue with the community that you're discerning with your spiritual director. Like, one doesn't discern in isolation. And even if you are, some people are graced with like a very deep, sudden conviction, like, oh, this is what God is asking me to do with my life. There still needs to be time given to the exploration of that call to understand it more fully so that it can be responded to more freely. And then even once you have entered a community, and there should be some sort of process to that, like before actually entering, when you've entered, there is still a process of formation that will take place before you get to the stage where you're like, right, I would like to make vows, and the community also think it's a good idea for me to make vows. So
it's a journey.
You have a long time to get to know what this means before it becoming a full commitment to your life.
Also, we're not ninjas. That's another misconception.
Speak for yourself.